Over 5 million immigrants live in the UK, yet many face an uphill battle that most can't even imagine. More than 60% of these immigrants have reported feeling excluded or discriminated against in their daily lives. But what's truly shocking? Many of them are legally living and working in the UK, contributing to the economy, and yet they're treated as second-class citizens. It's not just about finding a job or a place to live. It's about surviving a system designed to make their lives harder. Imagine being in a country where your right to healthcare or even basic housing is constantly questioned, simply because of where you were born or the accent you speak with. Add to that the rising tide of nationalism and xenophobia, and you begin to understand the intense pressures immigrants face every single day. From complicated visa processes to being rejected by landlords or employers based on your nationality, immigrants in the UK are battling more than just daily struggles. They're up against a system that doesn't seem to care about their presence or contribution. So why are immigrants in the UK constantly fighting an invisible war? What makes their journey so difficult, despite the fact that they bring so much to the table? This is not just a story of immigration. It's about a systemic struggle that's affecting millions. Stay with us as we dive into the shocking reasons why the odds are stacked against immigrants in the UK. Number 1. The Hostile Environment Policy. The Hostile Environment Policy was introduced in the UK in 2012 with the intention of deterring illegal immigration. On paper, it sounds simple. Create a system that makes it harder for undocumented immigrants to live and work in the UK. But in reality, this policy has created immense challenges, not just for illegal immigrants, but for legal immigrants as well. How does it affect them? The policy has made it so that immigrants, regardless of their status, face discrimination when accessing essential services. Immigrants often find themselves stuck in a bureaucratic maze where even the most basic services, like healthcare, housing, or banking, are hard to come by. For example, immigrants who legally reside in the UK might be asked to prove their immigration status every time they need medical treatment or even open a bank account. This constant need for paperwork creates unnecessary barriers, making immigrants feel like they're constantly under surveillance or suspicion. Moreover, landlords and employers are required by law to check immigration status before renting a property or offering a job. For many immigrants, this means their legal status is continually questioned, even if they've been living in the UK for years. Housing insecurity and employment discrimination are real consequences that many immigrants face daily, simply because the system sees them as potential threats rather than contributors to society. The Hostile Environment Policy also extends beyond practical challenges. It deepens stigma and alienates communities. The constant reminders of their outsider status can have lasting emotional and psychological effects. Immigrants begin to feel like they're not welcome, despite their contributions to society, creating an atmosphere of fear and discomfort. In essence, the policy doesn't just affect undocumented immigrants. It's an uphill battle for anyone who doesn't fit the narrow criteria the system seems to favour. And that, in itself, creates a deep sense of unease and insecurity in the immigrant community. Number 2. Rising nationalism and xenophobia. In recent years, rising nationalism in the UK has created a climate where immigrants are increasingly seen as scapegoats for economic and social problems. The Brexit vote in 2016 was a clear turning point, amplifying anti-immigrant sentiment. Since then, nationalist rhetoric has become more prevalent, with immigrants often blamed for job shortages, housing issues, and strain on public services. This shift in political and social attitudes has made the UK a more unwelcoming place for many immigrants. The effects of this rise in nationalism aren't just theoretical, they're felt in everyday life. Xenophobia has led to an increase in hate crimes, verbal abuse, and physical attacks on immigrants. Immigrants, especially those who are visibly different, whether in terms of skin colour, religion, or accent, are often targeted for discrimination. Studies show that in the years following Brexit, incidents of racially motivated hate crimes surged by more than 20% in some parts of the UK. What does this look like on the ground? Many immigrants experience a sense of alienation, as if they are seen as second-class citizens or undesirable. Their accents, cultural practices, and traditions are often ridiculed or dismissed, contributing to feelings of social exclusion. In workplaces, immigrants may face disrespect or unequal treatment because of their background. This creates a barrier to cultural integration and makes it difficult for them to fully participate in society. It's not just about direct harassment. Immigrants are also affected by the subtle, underlying biases that have become more pronounced in recent years. Employers, landlords, and even community members may hold subconscious prejudices that limit opportunities for immigrants, regardless of their qualifications or contribution to society. This climate of fear and hostility can take a serious toll on an immigrant's mental health, creating an invisible but powerful barrier to their success and well-being in the UK. Ultimately, rising nationalism has fostered an atmosphere where immigrants face increased social isolation and discrimination, making their lives even more challenging in a country that once prided itself on being a melting pot of cultures. Number 3. Limited access to social services. One of the most significant challenges immigrants face in the UK is limited access to social services. Although immigrants contribute significantly to the economy, many find it difficult to access essential public services like healthcare, education, and welfare due to their immigration status or lack of familiarity with the complex system. The barriers to accessing these services create unnecessary hardship and vulnerability for immigrants, often making them feel like second-class citizens. The NHS, for example, is supposed to be available to all UK residents, but immigrants, especially those from outside the EU, often face difficulty accessing care. Under the immigration health surcharge introduced in 2015, many immigrants are forced to pay for healthcare up front, even though they've contributed through taxes. Those without settled status may face even more significant barriers, with some not being able to receive treatment unless they can prove their right to remain. This can leave immigrants feeling like outsiders in a country they've made their home. Similarly, access to welfare support is restricted for many immigrants. If you're not a permanent resident or don't meet specific conditions, you're often excluded from claiming benefits like universal credit or housing assistance. This creates a financial strain on immigrant families who may already be struggling to make ends meet. The idea that immigrants come to the UK for benefits is a misconception. Many are simply trying to survive in a system that doesn't offer them the same protections as UK citizens. Housing is another area where immigrants face discrimination. Landlords often refuse to rent to immigrants or impose higher rents, claiming that they don't trust foreign tenants. This leaves many immigrants in a constant state of housing insecurity, struggling to find a safe and stable place to live. Without access to public housing or financial support, immigrants are left with few options. The lack of access to social services contributes to a growing sense of exclusion and marginalisation, making it even harder for immigrants to integrate fully into British society. Number 4. Discriminatory employment practices. When it comes to finding work in the UK, immigrants face significant hurdles, many of which stem from discriminatory employment practices. Even if an immigrant has the necessary qualifications, experience, and legal right to work, they often find themselves at a disadvantage compared to their British counterparts. The reason? Implicit bias and prejudices that exist in many workplaces across the UK. Research shows that immigrants, especially those with foreign-sounding names or distinct accents, are often overlooked for job opportunities or receive fewer interview invitations. In fact, studies indicate that candidates with ethnic-sounding names are 30% less likely to be called for an interview compared to those with Anglo-Saxon names. This unconscious bias can severely limit their chances of entering the job market, even when they are more than qualified for the position. Once in a job, immigrants are often subjected to lower wages and fewer opportunities for advancement. The pay gap between immigrants and native workers can be stark, with many immigrants earning significantly less despite having the same qualifications. This wage disparity is often compounded by discriminatory practices that prevent immigrants from accessing promotions or career development opportunities. They are often relegated to lower status jobs, even if their skills and experience suggest they could do more. Another issue immigrants face in the workplace is harassment and unequal treatment from colleagues and managers. While UK law prohibits discrimination, it still happens regularly. Immigrants may experience verbal abuse, microaggressions, or hostile working environments simply because of their background. For example, a non-native worker may face being excluded from team activities or marginalised in discussions because of their nationality or accent. For many immigrants, this combination of bias, lower wages, and lack of advancement creates a cycle of economic instability and frustration. Despite their dedication and qualifications, they remain trapped in low-paying, low-status positions, unable to break through the barriers of discrimination. Number 5. Housing crisis. The UK's housing crisis has left many immigrants struggling to find stable accommodation, and this challenge is compounded by discrimination in the rental market. With skyrocketing rent prices and an acute shortage of affordable housing, immigrants often face a double burden. Not only are they competing in an already competitive market, but they also encounter additional barriers because of their immigration status or ethnic background. Many immigrants, particularly those from non-EU countries, are rejected by landlords simply because of their nationality or the assumption that they will be a financial risk. A study found that Black and minority ethnic BME renters are far more likely to experience discrimination when applying for housing. Landlords may reject tenants based on their accent, name, or appearance, making it significantly harder for immigrants to secure a place to live. For those who manage to secure a rental property, high deposits, upfront payments, and a lack of housing stability make it difficult to maintain long-term housing. Immigrants are often asked for larger deposits or proof of permanent employment, something that can be hard to provide for those with temporary visas or those in precarious work. This puts immense financial pressure on immigrant families who are already navigating the complexities of a new country and culture. Moreover, immigrants are often excluded from social housing schemes, which are a lifeline for low-income families. Many face long waiting times for affordable homes, and because of their immigration status, they may not be eligible for support in some areas. The lack of stable housing contributes to mental stress and uncertainty, as immigrants are forced to move frequently or live in overcrowded, poor-quality accommodations. In this climate, the housing crisis becomes not just a matter of affordability, but also one of inclusion. Immigrants, particularly those with limited financial means, are left struggling to find a safe and stable place to live. The combination of high demand, rising rents, and systemic discrimination makes it increasingly difficult for them to feel truly settled in the UK. Number 6. Language barriers. Language barriers are one of the most immediate and visible challenges that many immigrants face when they move to the UK. Even though English is widely spoken, it is not always easy for immigrants to fully integrate or navigate day-to-day life if they are not fluent. These language challenges can affect everything from job opportunities to accessing public services and forming social connections. In the workplace, immigrants who do not speak English fluently often face underemployment or are relegated to low-skilled jobs despite having higher qualifications. Employers may hesitate to hire non-native English speakers, assuming they won't be able to communicate effectively or understand workplace expectations. This can be incredibly frustrating for immigrants who are skilled and educated, but find themselves stuck in jobs that don't align with their abilities simply because of their accent or language proficiency. Even in everyday situations, language can create misunderstandings and frustration. Whether it's reading official letters, attending a doctor's appointment, or filling out government forms, immigrants often struggle to understand the language or the legal jargon that comes with these interactions. In some cases, a simple error in understanding can lead to serious consequences like missed appointments or fines, compounding their sense of isolation. Socially, language barriers can also limit immigrants' ability to form meaningful connections. They may feel excluded from conversations, social events, or even their own communities because they can't communicate easily with others. This can lead to feelings of loneliness and alienation, making it harder to build a support network in a new country. For many immigrants, language courses or language exchange programs are essential to overcoming these barriers, but they are often time-consuming and expensive. In the meantime, immigrants may find themselves struggling to be understood or misjudged because of their limited language skills. Ultimately, the challenge of language barriers in the UK is not just about learning a new language, it's about navigating a system that often doesn't make room for those still trying to master it. Number 7. Precarious legal status and visa issues. For many immigrants in the UK, the fear of losing legal status is a constant source of anxiety. The visa process in the UK is notoriously complex, with long waiting times, high fees, and uncertainty at every stage. Immigrants are often left living in limbo, constantly worried that their visa may not be renewed or that their status may change, leaving them vulnerable to deportation or forced to leave the country. The process of renewing a visa is not only costly, but it also involves navigating a bureaucratic maze. Immigrants must provide an overwhelming amount of documentation, prove their financial stability, and sometimes even pass additional language tests or meet other conditions to stay. The pressure to comply with these rules can feel overwhelming, particularly for those already dealing with the stress of settling into a new life. Those with temporary visas are particularly vulnerable. They face constant uncertainty, knowing that their legal right to stay could expire at any moment. This creates a sense of insecurity that affects all aspects of their life, whether it's securing housing, maintaining employment, or even accessing basic services. The fear of being denied an extension or faced with a sudden immigration raid makes it difficult to fully integrate or feel at home in the UK. In some cases, the immigration system is unforgiving. A missed deadline or an error in paperwork can lead to the loss of legal status, forcing immigrants to either leave the country or face the risk of being labelled as illegal. For many, this creates an endless cycle of stress and vulnerability, as they must constantly fight to maintain their place in the country. This legal uncertainty doesn't just affect immigrants on a practical level. It takes an emotional toll as well. The fear of being separated from their family, having to return to a country they've left behind, or being unable to continue their career can be emotionally draining. For many immigrants, the battle to stay in the UK is a daily struggle that affects their mental health and well-being. Number 8. Media representation and stereotyping. Media representation plays a crucial role in shaping public opinion, and for many immigrants in the UK, the media often perpetuates negative stereotypes that further marginalise their communities. Immigrants are frequently portrayed in a one-dimensional light, as either burdens on society or threats to national security, which paints an inaccurate and harmful picture of who they truly are. These stereotypes can have far-reaching consequences, influencing both public perception and policy decisions. In the news, immigrants are often depicted as the cause of crime, unemployment, or economic instability, despite the fact that studies consistently show that immigrants contribute positively to the economy and society. For example, immigrants play key roles in vital sectors like healthcare, construction, and education, yet these contributions are rarely highlighted. Instead, media outlets focus on sensationalized stories that reinforce negative narratives, such as illegal immigration or the alleged strain immigrants put on public services. This skewed portrayal creates a climate of fear and resentment, making it harder for immigrants to gain acceptance in society. The problem isn't limited to the news, it extends to popular culture as well. Movies, TV shows, and advertisements often depict immigrants as villains, outsiders, or unwanted guests. These portrayals fuel xenophobic attitudes and discrimination, as they reinforce the idea that immigrants are inherently different and undesirable. For many immigrants, this constant negative portrayal can lead to feelings of self-doubt, alienation, and rejection, as they feel their true identities are being misrepresented. Beyond just being harmful, this media representation creates tangible barriers for immigrants, especially when it comes to finding work, integrating into society, or feeling valued. If the broader population views immigrants through a lens of stereotype and prejudice, it's harder for them to break through and be seen for who they truly are. It's essential to question the narratives we see in the media and challenge these harmful stereotypes so that immigrants can be accurately represented and fully integrated into British society. Number 9. Cultural integration challenges. One of the most significant challenges immigrants face in the UK is the struggle to integrate culturally while maintaining their own identity. The pressure to conform to British norms can create a conflict for many, especially when trying to balance two cultures, one from their home country and another in their new environment. While the UK is known for its cultural diversity, the process of blending in while staying true to one's roots can be a complex and emotionally draining experience. Many immigrants feel compelled to assimilate into British society quickly, often sacrificing aspects of their own cultural heritage in the process. This can involve changing the way they dress, the food they eat, or even the way they speak. But despite these efforts, immigrants often still feel like outsiders, as society may not fully accept them or may perceive them as too different. This creates an ongoing identity struggle, where immigrants are constantly navigating between their traditional cultural practices and the desire to fit in. For some, this tension can lead to feelings of alienation and loss of self. Imagine being caught between the desire to embrace the culture of your new home while not wanting to lose your connection to your heritage. This sense of displacement can be difficult to manage, as many immigrants find themselves isolated from both their home culture and their adopted one. It's a difficult balancing act, and when done wrong, it can lead to mental stress and a feeling of not belonging anywhere. Moreover, the lack of cultural understanding or acceptance from the host society can make the process of integration even harder. Many immigrants face microaggressions, cultural insensitivity, or outright discrimination because their customs or behaviours differ from the majority. This can lead to a sense of rejection, further hindering the ability to integrate fully and contribute to society. Ultimately, cultural integration is not just about adapting to new surroundings. It's about finding a way to exist in two worlds without feeling disconnected from either. Immigrants need support, understanding, and a welcoming environment that values diversity and encourages genuine cultural exchange. Number 10. Impact of Brexit on immigrant communities. The UK's decision to leave the European Union, commonly known as Brexit, has had profound consequences for immigrant communities, particularly those from EU countries. Prior to Brexit, EU citizens could freely live, work, and settle in the UK, contributing significantly to various sectors, including healthcare, education, and hospitality. However, with the passing of Brexit, these rights have been severely restricted, creating a sense of uncertainty and fear for millions of EU nationals. For many EU immigrants, the immediate effect of Brexit has been the loss of freedom of movement. Those who had been living in the UK for years suddenly face complicated visa applications and the threat of being unable to remain in the country. The settled status application process, although meant to protect EU citizens, has been fraught with delays, confusion, and bureaucratic obstacles, leaving many immigrants in a constant state of uncertainty about their future. Beyond the legal and administrative challenges, Brexit has fostered a climate of xenophobia and nationalism, which has further alienated immigrant communities. Many immigrants have reported feeling unwelcome and stigmatised in the wake of Brexit. The political rhetoric surrounding the referendum painted immigrants as a problem, and as a result, EU nationals living in the UK often feel like their status is now under constant scrutiny. Even though many have contributed to British society for years, they are now faced with the unsettling reality of being viewed as outsiders in a country they once considered home. The economic impact of Brexit has also been significant for immigrant communities. The new immigration system, which prioritises skilled workers, has made it harder for immigrants to find work in lower-paying sectors, where many immigrants have traditionally been employed. This shift has placed additional financial pressure on immigrant families, many of whom are now forced to adapt to a more restrictive and competitive job market. In sum, Brexit has reshaped the immigrant experience in the UK, leading to legal challenges, economic instability, and a sense of exclusion that continues to affect millions. The reality for immigrants in the UK is far more complex than many realise. From discriminatory employment practices to legal uncertainties, these individuals are not just fighting to be seen, they are fighting to survive in a system that doesn't always acknowledge their worth. Despite their hard work, skills, and contributions, they are often subjected to biases and barriers that make it harder to thrive. Brexit has only added fuel to the fire, creating more confusion, fear, and division among immigrant communities. The promise of a better life quickly turns into a daily struggle as immigrants face an overwhelming lack of support in securing basic services, housing, and job opportunities. The challenges of cultural integration and the pressure to fit in while staying true to their roots create an emotional burden that most will never fully understand. However, the story doesn't end here. Immigrants, despite these obstacles, continue to resiliently fight, adapt, and build their lives in a country that often treats them as outsiders. The strength they show in the face of adversity speaks volumes about their character, and it's crucial for us to remember that immigration is not a threat but an opportunity to grow as a society. As we reflect on these struggles, it's clear that there's still a long way to go. The UK's treatment of immigrants needs to evolve, to become more inclusive, more compassionate, and more just. Until then, the battle continues, one that's shaping the future of millions of lives. If this video made you think, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. We put a lot of effort into bringing you this content, so make sure to hit subscribe. It's just one click, but it helps us bring you even more in-depth, thought-provoking videos.